You are now listening to the Business Chatter Podcast.
All right, we're live. Welcome to the Business Chatter Podcast. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Chris, and we're happy that you're here with us today.
We are happy. And today, we got a serious topic. No guest, serious topic. I mean, not that a bunch of our topics aren't serious, but it's a little bit more strict and focused today. We're talking about the PGA and LIV merger. Significant shift in the golfing landscape, altering the fabric of the industry. It's going to lead to increased global reach, potentially, product innovation, potentially, and heightened competition, potentially. Now that there's a market out there, they've seen there's a market.
That's true. And it's thank you for that intro. You really before we started recording, you told me you had one, and that was a good one. Well done.
Thank you.
Nice.
Tried. See, yeah. I couldn't tell you before because I'd let it out the first time, and the second time wouldn't be nearly the same. It'd be
yeah, sometimes the impact has to come from the initial take at it. So I'm with you. We're a minimal editing podcast. So
you know what this is like? It's like when two golfers play best ball, but in this case, the best ball is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and the handicaps are antitrust regulations.
I saw or heard, I guess, through reporting that they didn't even consult antitrust lawyers before agreeing to this merger.
Are you surprised?
I mean, partially, right? Wouldn't you think that the way that...
Like, who are you going to sue? A country? Like, what's going to happen?
I mean, the PGA, they are an entity that can be sued, right? They have a legal team. I mean, both sides have a legal team, right? They've been tied up in contract court for quite some time now, which again is maybe part of the reason why this merger happens. But I don't know. It's just a strange thing to think that you're going to form a monopoly and not have any legal presence to be like, hey, these are some of the issues that are going to come up. I don't know.
No, I agree. But hey, instead of talking about the drawbacks, let's start with the benefits. I think it's easier to get into. It's also more relatable, like why it was done. Obviously, there's some benefit to somebody.
Sure.
It wouldn't have done it.
Sure.
So obviously, it's expected to increase overall profitability of both the entities.
Yes, quite a bit of money is in play right now.
I think the PGA has a massive amount of knowledge on the market they built up over time. LIV has a massive amount of money.
Yes.
And I think I think the reduction in operation costs for both of them is going to be significant. They're going to be very efficient. Lots of potential for exclusive deals, products, things like that. Sponsorships, media rights. I don't think it's a bad move overall, whether you agree with the politics of it. I think that it makes a lot of sense. Like it shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yes, in no way was it surprising. I think the initial, I overheard someone saying it and I thought it was a joke, to be honest, but the more I sat there and thought about it, yeah, it's not surprising that this is where it was coming, especially when you saw where LIV was at that point, which obviously not too long ago. But, if we take the politics out of the conversation from a business perspective, it certainly makes sense. The consolidation of tours and leagues is not a bad move, especially when the PGA, not that they were hurting, but they did lose some of their superstars. And that does impact the bottom line for them, as well as, LIV wasn't drawing in the way that they had anticipated, and they did guarantee a lot of money to these players. So, both sides were seeing the impact of this rift, this chasm that was essentially created in a sport that's been around for quite some time and has actually been gaining popularity year over year. It's actually a unique circumstance where you see the sport was getting more popular. It has this giant rift, and now the disruptor is not overtaking. Well, the disruptor is overtaking in the sense of this way that this merger is happening, but the disruptor isn't overtaking the industry. my personal opinion is that we're going to see the PGA exist as it has been, with maybe adding some of the live kind of spice, right? And the new take on the way that tournaments are played as an added bonus, which a lot of golf fans may end up enjoying. And it gives the players some longevity, which, it seems like it doesn't hurt from the way that they've spoken about it.
Yeah, and I think it also gives the PGA entry into markets they didn't have access to before.
Sure.
But there is downsides to it. Again, near monopoly doesn't come with all upsides, and you touched on it before I flipped it on you. A lot of increased scrutiny from regulatory bodies I see upcoming, like ultimate bunkers on the 18th hole, antitrust lawyers. Like, you got to get past them. Like, that's it.
Absolutely. There's no way around it. I mean, I know that there's been talk of what they're calling it. It's not an acquisition.
Wait, hold on. Was my joke right? I don't play golf.
No, I was gonna say you're really a lot of hole in ones with your puns, your golf puns. So well done. You're striking the ball well, as some may say. Yeah, that's.
I don't know if that was a good one or not. I don't know. I don't know golf well enough.
Well, I'm just gonna say whatever I want then, and we'll see how you react.
I'm Googling golf jokes as we go and applying them to this. So
that's. Well, fortunately, we do know that some of our listeners are golfers, which we appreciate you listening. And certainly, if these jokes aren't landing on the fairway, let us know. Come on, that was good. That was decent. All right, so yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day,
the only time that you want to be, what is it called? Slicing is in the kitchen.
Is this going to be is this going to become a joke off?
No, it's not.
All right, good. I hope not, because someone might have to take a mulligan, and that would be tough. All right, now I'm done. So, yeah, look, as a fan, I've become a golf fan. I've watched golf, on and off throughout my life. Initially, it was, kind of passively. I've gotten much more into it recently. I was not a fan of live. I'll just be transparent on that. However, I do understand, actually, from watching the Full Swing documentary. Like, I mean, I get it when guys play less, they make more, right? It gives you the opportunity to keep your body healthy, and there's an entertainment factor. I didn't go to any of the tournaments, but I know people who have, and they really enjoyed it. They thought it was a different take on a sport that maybe wasn't. The technology within the sport was evolving, but the experience was not. And sometimes the legacy is fun to participate in, but with a new generation coming, there needs to maybe be a little bit more of a reason to participate or to want to be there live. And Liv did take that a little bit more seriously, and maybe they inject that in and give the PGA the competitive advantage that it needs to not necessarily compete against other leagues, but to not fade into obscurity and continue on the path that it's on for growth and interest.
So that actually gets me to my next point here. I think there's a good possibility the merger really helps innovation just in the golf tech, sports tech world in general. Like, I was just doing a little bit of reading before this, but like digital scorecards, real-time player tracking, more advanced golf simulations, or e-golf type things.
Sure.
I think that's something that this really benefits, and even maybe an app that can help find your balls in the rough, specifically yours.
That's a good idea. I mean,
because I'm starting to think there's a black hole somewhere out there, like 7th or 8th hole, that's just gobbling up your shots, Chris, from what I heard from somebody I don't want to.
Hey, well, we'll see. Once I'm good enough to feel confident to share one of my scorecards, I'll do so. But yeah, there's definitely. I spent some money on balls, but haven't we all, right? I'm very new to the game, so I'll take that.
Let me digress one more time. All right. Growing up, my grandpa lived in the woods, but the guy that lived like behind him used to drive balls into the woods all the time. So me and my cousins went out there one day, and we probably filled like the Homer buckets, the Home Depot buckets.
Yep.
6 or 7 of them to the brim with golf balls in his backyard.
Man, that's. I bet every time I pass a garage sale, I'm looking for that exact scenario. Haven't found it yet.
Yeah. So me and my brother naturally took them home and hit them all into my parents' backyard. And my dad was mowing over golf balls for like 4 years.
Sure, he was thrilled about that.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine. Hey, that's I mean, it is there's like a I feel like there's this childhood experience that, I've encountered a number of people who've had of, either something like that where you have a neighbor who plays or you go to the driving range yourself and you try to hit the person in the cart collecting the balls, right? Or it's your dad driving over them with the mower, something along those lines. It with newer generations that is going to evolve, and like you said before, the tech is going to be an important piece of that. uh, you know the PGA isn't driving that, right? Live isn't driving that. However, gaining that type of interest is going to require a pivot in the way that brands and companies have looked at golf, where it's going to expand from just being here are specific player tools to how do we get more people playing this game? Because at the end of the day, the more people that play, the more money there is to be made on these specific tools that help to drive value. And not just because I'm an ambassador for Shank at Golf, shankatgolf.com, but there are a lot of brands that have popped up very recently that are their target market is the 18 to 35-year-old novice player who wants to do it but knows how to take themselves, not to take themselves too seriously. And, Liv seemed a little bit more laid back and did a good job of bringing in that market.
So, how do you think it's going to affect brand identity? Do you think I I don't I mean I think obviously the PGA is the stronger brand in my opinion. Maybe I'm like very biased, which I definitely am.
Sure.
Do you think one's going to be absorbed into the other, or they're going to create a whole new entity? I have to imagine it's going to be one's absorbed into the other. It doesn't make sense. And that one being Live into
I,
PGA or something.
I mean, I kind of look at it as this is going to be a dated reference, and it's not exact, but just roll with me here. When the WCW went under, as well as ECW,
Dude, I don't
essentially.
even know what the heck these are.
Well, our listeners may. Let me just roll with this, right? The WWF at the time, now WWE, bought the assets for WCW and ECW. And essentially they brought back those brands and tried to have, different what they called stables, but just, different guys, characters under those brands and tried to revive them. Like I said, it's not a one-to-one, it's not a perfect explanation, but I see PGA being the serious, prestigious, well-known tournaments that we have all grown up watching and seeing, and I see Live being the more fun tournament style where, PGA you can't wear shorts, Live you can. PGA is very quiet and, some would say stuffy, not my view, but just that's kind of what you hear when you hear the conversation. Live is going to have music and there's going to be it's like more drinking and the whole thing. And PGA did loosen their tie, so to speak, with Waste Management Open, which takes place in Phoenix every year in February. That's a lot more laid back, but I do think that PGA is going to maintain the status that they've built over, hundreds of years now, or over 100 years. And then you're going to have Live that's going to be the more kind of fun party environment where players are going to be able to let loose and show their personalities more, and they're going to leverage the younger golfers building up their social personas, and they're going to find ways to better monetize that. So that's really the way I think it's going to end up going. And there's also the DP World Tour, which is the European tour, and that's probably going to stay more on the PGA side of things, unless they have like a Live branch that leverages Europe too.
Okay, so they're gonna like different tours will have different regulations. So they'll keep some of like the old school baseball type
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah. Like the purists will still have what they love, but the new generation will probably grow and develop and have a new form of the same game, just played in a different way.
I think
It's going
that's
to
a
be
good.
more like, the buddies playing on a Saturday morning as opposed to, your grandpa taking it seriously.
Yeah, I think that's a good move instead of creating one standard, especially because it's hard to correct if you overcorrect. It's like mixing Play-Doh. Can't
So,
unmix Play-Doh. Easy to mix, hard to unmix. You-
absolutely. And that's actually a great way to put it, because it is a very difficult. It's going to be a very difficult process for them. I mean, no question. There's a lot of controversy in terms of the way that the PGA handled it initially when Live came out. There's the players who left to go to Live. There's the ones who stayed loyal, and The compensation piece is a whole other issue. One thing I did want to mention, when we think about the impact on the players, there were two camps, right? It's either you left or you stayed, and the ones who stayed seem to benefit from, I think, the majority of fans being able to identify them as being loyal to the PGA, and then, again, not being political, but there's some additional affiliations that, lines that were drawn. Now that some of these players who could have been making millions and millions, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars extra that stayed, PGA has assured them that there'll be ways for them to be paid back. It's going to be very difficult to navigate that. They're happy to have their friends back, but there will be some tension, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that is navigated, because the players weren't happy when this kind of came out overnight through Twitter without them knowing about it. And we've talked about so many times, the team is so important. These players are a major part of the PGA team. So it is going to be very interesting how that piece gets handled, and where, the broken trust helps to get repaired, if it does.
So, all right, I have two more points then I want to bring up here, just for the sake of time. I know we want to keep this one shorter and engaging.
Yep.
I feel like we've been incredibly engaging.
I hope so.
You piqued my interest, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. So the second to last thing, implications for tournament organizers. You were talking about this briefly earlier before we jumped on, I believe. But there has to be a shift in dynamic now that it's one unified entity. Is it? And I know and I don't know how golf works. I don't even know if we touched on it, like this specific point, like through what we were talking about, or like what we've talked about doesn't encompass this, but I need you to break this down for me.
So, again, I'm speaking from a point of partial ignorance, right? Because I'm still newer to the game. But the point that we were talking about earlier is more so, there's controversy around a number of brands, right? As a whole, you look at any company, there's something in their history that people would not necessarily agree with, and not like a social political issue, more so of like, there's human rights considerations, there's the way that products are made, all of those factors. The one difference that I do see between kind of Liv's ownership and the way that PGA Tour is currently sponsored, there are the companies that are involved. As an individual, you can identify the issues with those companies. The players, to my understanding, and I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, please, let us know. But the players don't necessarily get to choose those sponsors, in the sense of, like, Nike. There's some things to be said about the way that their items are produced, or like Raytheon is a defense contractor, right? So there's political thought around that. Them sponsoring the PGA is a little bit different than the money coming directly from an entity that, has some political considerations to be made, which impacted some of the decisions from players, meaning Live. So that is something that's going to be very difficult to navigate. As a player, you don't have to be sponsored by Nike individually, but Nike may be a sponsor on the tour. So you might not agree with the way that Nike operates. I'm just using them as an example because they're prominent in golf. You might not agree with them directly, but you don't have to be sponsored by them. On the Live Tour, all of the money is coming from, the same entity, and, you are tacitly agreeing by accepting that. So I think that that's going to be something that's going to be very interesting on how they navigate that process. And again, that's not me putting my views on it. That's just the way that seems, because the money does have to come from somewhere. And that was a big point of conversation from the start.
Okay. That was a good answer. It does not segue into my last question. I was hoping it did.
All right. Well, it could be a non sequitur. Just jump into the next thing.
Is there smaller golf associations? If so, how is this affecting them? Is there like increased pressure from more competition from the merged entity of PGA Live?
So there are smaller entities, in the sense of like the Corn Ferry Tour, I believe, is the amateur tour, or it's either the amateur tour, or it's the first threshold, above college. So that I actually don't know how that's going to go downstream. It's a really good question, and I don't have the answer for that. There's some other smaller tours, but the three major ones that are involved in this are the PGA sanctioned tour, the DP World Tour, and Live. I mean, I'm sure there will be downstream effects, especially again, not to harp on the point, but a lot of college players, a much younger generation, have different views potentially on the way that they view the world. As we see just how generations change, it will be very interesting to see how that starts to pan out when they get to that point of graduating college. They're playing as amateurs, you win or you get the exemption to become a pro. And once that happens, how that shakes out. So it's a great question. I'm truly not knowledgeable enough on it to answer, but certainly we can dig a little bit deeper and follow up on it, because it is something that we should be monitoring ongoing, because this is, relatively live information. We're in, late early June right now.
Yeah, we're recording this on June 12th and it's being released on the 14th. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're right there.
Yeah, we're not breaking, but we're early. Soon, after this, we can say we're journalists. I'm just kidding.
Unless something happens that makes
I'm
this
kidding.
totally irrelevant, this is like a pretty relevant episode here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But Chris,
Anthony,
that's it.
that is it. I think we did a good job of jumping in and jumping out.
I think we stayed under par.
Well done.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
These kind folks.
Yeah, thanks for watching, listening, liking, subscribing. You can follow us on Spotify, Business Chatter Podcast, Instagram, Business Chatter Pod, at Business Chatter Pod, YouTube, the Business Chatter Podcast, or I always mess that one up. Is that right?
Just Business Chatter Pod.
Okay.
One day you'll get it. I'll put it in the edit. Don't worry.
You can email us at host@businesschatterpod.com. We will respond.
We will.
Stay tuned. I think pretty soon upcoming, we are going to do a We Will Respond episode. I know we talked about it in the past. We're going to release a form.
Yep.
We're going to have you guys put questions in it. We're going to cherry pick the easiest ones to answer.
Yep.
We will answer those ones.
Exactly. Yes. We really do appreciate it. We know your time is valuable. Thank you for sharing it with us. We're the Business Chatter Podcast. Consider us your crash course on value.
Wait. Drop your merch links.
Okay, I was gonna add them in like I did last time, but I can do it now.
I didn't know if you did that. That's probably better. Nobody wants to hear it, honestly.
I mean, well, they're gonna hear it in the same way. It's just at a different time. But now that you said it, almostvintagechris.com, at almostvintagechris. Soon we'll have a Business Chatter Pod something on there, so that'll be pretty cool to check out.
Use my shirt idea. Come on.
Yeah, well, not that, but we'll do maybe a different shirt. Code BCP for 10% off your order. And like I said, I'm an ambassador for Shank at Golf, shankatgolf.com, at Shank at Golf on Instagram. You could use the code CGolf15 for 15% off your order. They are a small business, so we really would appreciate you helping out. And obviously, the more opportunities that come from that, maybe we can get them on the podcast. So potential benefit all around.
So my mom listened to a couple of the episodes.
And
she asked if your mom and wife like me.
Well, you still owe them an apology.
That was her only question. She's like, "There's no way they like you. There's no way."
Well, they liked you more before you went on your heel kick.
She's like, "That's so offensive." I mean, she's like, imagine. She's like, "If somebody said that about you as a kid, I would have lost my mind." I was like, "Well, was I?"
That's why you stay in the basement, or we do this virtually.
Yeah, true.
That's funny. That's great though that she listened. I'm glad. Thank you for being on my side. I appreciate it. I mean, not a hard side to be on, but I appreciate it.
I was just busting you. It's not true. Your mom and wife, probably, hopefully.
Well, hopefully, but at least you finally admitted to it.
I feel like I've admitted to it before. To you,
yeah, but now for the fans,
it's like a public apology.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I feel like you should still do a more formal one, but hey, I'll take what I could get.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll think about it.
We'll see. Maybe we get some comments. Let us know what you think, and we'll go from there, because we will respond, and it would be entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah, we will respond, and if you are offering video editing services, we will probably say no.
Yes, but we do appreciate it, and we're going to. We do look into it. We are very bootstrapped right now, so there's an element of that in play. But as we've mentioned, hopefully we're going to do some updates, over the summer and figure things out, and then once we're back at it in a heavier capacity in the winter, then that might be the time where we'll be back in touch potentially. Fair way to handle it, I think. But we do appreciate it because there has been some really cool outreach from a lot of talented people that have given very detailed breakdowns, and we do appreciate the work that you're doing. Maybe one day we'll reach out to you, and if you want us to, we could share that information, for your services to be available to others, because we'd love to help.
We will respond.
We will respond. Okay.
All right.
On that note, we're the Business Chatter Podcast. Consider us your crash course on value creation through the words of individuals who have done it before. We'll see you next time.
I said bye. I think I just overlapped you.
Well, stop doing that, man. Come on. You overlapped me last week, overlapping me this week. What is
You're
this?
saying too many words. I'm anticipating you shutting your mouth, and then it keeps going.
I say we'll see you next time, and then when I'm done saying that, you can say whatever you want.
Sorry, okay? I'm sorry.
That's right. That's 2 in 1 episode.
You're like the wife I don't have.
Well, not yet.
I get texts from Chris. He's like, "Did you floss tonight?" I'm like, "Yes, I flossed tonight."
Hey,
like, obviously.
Flossing is very important.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, you text me every night and ask me if I flossed.
Well, hey,
I've never lived with Chris, but for some reason he feels the need to be like, "Have you flossed?"
That's what good friends do. I'm looking out for you.
Did you change your socks today? Are you hydrated? Like, yeah, I'm hydrated.
Well, hey, hydration's key.
Right, guys, Chris got me a water bottle for my birthday that's measured. It's like it has different like playful phrases on it to make sure you're hydrated. Like if it's all the way filled up, it says thirsty. If it's like 2/3 of the way through, it says we're getting there. If it's 1/3 of the way through, it said almost time for a refill. And if it says I need to go to the bathroom, refill me. Something like that. Yeah, he got me that. Crazy.
Support your friends. Make sure they're hydrated. We're mostly water, so don't forget that. All right, we'll see you next time. Say bye.
Bye.